And hello, everyone on Substack live. Just to double check everyone there, could you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us? Maybe Skyler, you could say a few words and we just get some sound.
Well, hello everyone on Substack. Hello everyone here in the Zoom room. It feels really good to be back here. That's what I'm noticing as I sit here and see these beautiful people, some of whom I've known for a long time. Chad, hi. So many friends. Yeah, feels great to be here. I'm excited.
Beautiful. It's really good to have you on. And yeah, as I think I said in one of the emails, I've been an admirer of the this kind of processes you run and just your general energy and approach and your poetry as well for some time. And we've collaborated a little bit in the past, but I really wanted to uh, have you on at this stage in the inquiry that we're on in Kainos, which began beginning of last week. And if anyone is just tuning in, so to launch Kainos, really I had the thought that many of us feel we are once again sort of in a world between worlds. The old world order, what you could say the old liberal world order is crumbling. There is a sense of kind of energy, chaos, revolution in the air, and there is also really, in my view, the lack of a coherent counterculture that isn't just a pendulum swing back to where we've been. And so I'm really curious about, well, what does it actually look like to use this moment in history for all of us collectively to move towards something new? Kainos means new, but it's new in substance rather than just new in time. What is the genuinely new? And for me, so far in these conversations, it's been both really inspiring and also, in a sense, forcing me to come to the limits of my own sort of programming, because I notice how badly I want there to be an answer to that I can grasp and go, yeah, boom, okay, it's that direction. And then noticing the complexity of this question and the fact that it's a question as the poet Rilke said, we have to live into the answer, right? It's not a question of what do we do in a sense, it's more who do we become. And I think that's another reason I wanted to have Skyler joining us. And we're going to start a little bit differently today because we are going to start with a really lovely film that Skyler and her partner, Ari Kushner, created. It's a couple of minutes long. We're going to stream it here on the Zoom, so you guys will all see it. And then, Nico, if you could put in the Substack chat the Instagram link, then everyone can check it out on Instagram so we can all kind of watch it at the same time. So that link's in there, and Nico might put it in a couple more times as well. So, Skylar, just while I'm fiddling around with tech, is there anything you'd like to add or share or just kind of bring into the space before the film?
Uh, um, yeah, I'm just working on arriving into the space. So I guess just an invitation to anyone here who feels like they just maybe could use a minute to like arrive a bit more into the space. It's like I'm noticing I've got two screens right now, and I'm like, it's doubly intense the like where to look, and so I'm just really wanting to be present with myself and with all of you and with all of you on Substack. Um, yeah, and I feel like there's a thank you I want to say to you, Ali. Um, I was just appreciating how you hold the group even through these, like the care that you're taking with us, even as we embark on the next hour and a half. And it's one of your strengths. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm really touched. I'm really moved by the way that you've opened Kainos. I feel really excited about this new start. So, yay!
Oh,
Happy to be
thank you
here.
very much. Yeah, and it's so glad to have you. And thank you for sort of inviting a moment of stillness, which I think I need myself from sort of, as you say, sort of a techie movement between lots of different
You mean
places.
life? We all
Huh?
need that. Life?
Yes, life, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and I
sense
think
of slowing down.
I would love to say something also about what people are about to see. So this is a small video. It's a piece of art. So one of the things I wanted to talk about when Ali made the invite, and he said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And what came to me was life as art. which is something I've been practicing, and it feels like an answer for me to the question of where to go from here. And so I've been making a lot of art. I'm always writing, and a lot of poetry. The last few years have been full of poetry for me. And this particular, I mean, I guess it's a poem, but I actually call it a transmission, because it has a different energy than uh, sometimes these transmissions come through, and they come fully formed. It's like a download. Some people use that word, but it's like I'm out for a walk usually, or making mandalas, playing in nature, and then boom, or sleeping, and it drops in, and it usually drops in pretty complete. And then it's me on the phone, like racing to catch up with the words and trying not to lose any of them. So this is a transmission that I received in, I think, early December, and it came with the title or the headline, "Go Time." It's go time. And it made me laugh. I think, well, we'll probably get into this, Ali, but I'm also very interested in inspiration and where the inspiration is coming from. Like, it's one thing to receive the download, but also to ask, like, where's it coming from, this download, or who's it coming from? Um, and so I find that my guides, my inspiration, whoever I'm in contact with, and it's different characters, but they often like they dropped in go time, and I thought, well, it's kind of cheesy, right? Like, it's kind of funny. And they were pretty insistent that that was the phrase. And so it's not really up to me in some ways with these transmissions. Like, my job is to be pretty true to the words as they're coming through. So that's what this is. And then the visuals were generated by AI by my partner, who's just a brilliant editor. So yeah, that's the
Yeah, it's so fitting for I think not just the conversation we want to open up here, but I think the essence of Kainos, and also I just want to name this idea of inspiration being something that comes to us from the outside, rather than this process of how are we going to fix culture, how are we going to do something. There's that sense of inspiration, it's literally being breathed into from the outside, which I think is really important to bring in. So we'll play that in a second. People on Substack, Nico's going to put in the Studio Kainos Instagram, which is a lot easier to just put in your browser. And we only have 3 videos up, and it is one of those. So it's the one that you'll see with the mandala on it, so that you can watch along with us. And everyone else, I'm going to share sound and that. Okay, I'm going to share. Can everyone see that? Yeah. Great. And give me thumbs up if you can then hear while we play.
Stop worrying. Start walking. Stay open-hearted. Keep walking. Trust yourself. Trust those you already trust even more. Like your life depends on it. Surrender to the ground of being, to your destiny, to your heart's longing. Put the sacred at the center in all things. Lean back into the arms of the Great Mother. Then hang on tight. Your steadiness is the key to the future's brightness. Stop worrying. Keep walking. There is a plan, but it's on such a large scale, a cosmic scale, that no small mind or small thinking can grasp it. It requires all of us to play our part as best we can. Doesn't it make sense that the only plan that will get us out of this mess has been architected from beyond this mess? Take a minute, a quiet minute, a deep breath. When you reach within, below fear, to the base of your awareness and the bottom of your heart, there is an answer there for you. Trust what you hear and then do it. When enough of us are acting directly from these orders, we are an army of love, We will find the portals and pathways and bridges we've been searching for. They will appear out of thin air. It will feel like a miracle. It will be a miracle. This is how we organize. We become a living, loving, breathing, synchronized organ of the divine cosmic plan that is pulsing through us. Get ready. Don't doubt. Doubt is the killer. Stop worrying, start walking. It's go time.
Yes, very nice. Lots of claps, silent claps through hyperspace. Yeah, really lovely, Skyler. Thank you. I was when you guys sent it earlier, I watched it and thought, yeah, that's a really nice way to start. And on Substack, hopefully some of you were able to watch that in the Instagram. And as Benjamin Oren says, if you look closer, you can see the reflection of the film in our eyeballs, which yeah, isn't optimal viewing. But yeah, they're still working out a lot of kinks on this live video on Substack. So thanks for bearing with us with that. I think clickable links, definitely one of them that they should look at. But you can look at it after this on our Instagram as well. So Schuyler, perhaps maybe a nice place to start, I'm feeling, would be that question that you touch on in that piece, which is, at this moment in time, and maybe all moments in time, when we need to shift into something new, it doesn't always come from inside us. In fact, one might argue it comes from outside of us most of the time in some form of insight or revelation. If we wanted to, we could talk about it in spiritual terms, or if people feel more comfortable with cognitive science, we have a perceptual frame, and then we have moments that break that frame. And then new insight comes in from outside the frame. We make a new perceptual frame, and we're in that constant process of kind of death and renewal of the way we're seeing the world. I think that's going on. I think there is also something much deeper going on and more mysterious. But what are some of the things that you are feeling are coming through at this time in history that we need right now?
All right. I feel like, full disclosure, like I have I think the gift of my unique vantage point is how open I am to these unseen energies, and yeah, so I feel like I want to just completely go there. Like I just want to go into the weird places. Like I want to go into those places without editing myself, or like trying to couch it better for people who are more oriented to the scientific. So maybe you could help me with that. Because I just think it serves if I can just like go fully out there. So that's my disclaimer. I'm gonna go fully out. You don't have to agree with me. Um, but that's me, like kind of in my most authentic expression of, and the questions you're asking are very personal, like what do I see, or what do I feel? And so, yeah, I mean, things are getting really weird. Things are getting like really crazy. You mentioned chaos. Um, I love chaos. If anyone here practices 5 rhythms, and I bet some of you do, right? The Gabrielle Ross modality. I always joked that chaos was my favorite rhythm, but it's really coming in handy now. So, yeah, I think that like, yes, so many things are shifting so quickly. I mean, in that video, you saw a lot of portals. So Ari and I've been seeing a lot of portals. I've been dreaming of portals. In the last year, I've had 3 or 4 dreams, and dreams is a big source of download or revelation, inspiration. A lot of the words that you used, Ali, they come to me in my dream state. They come to me. And I think that's beautiful. Actually, that's an interesting thing to talk about, is like, where do people get their inspiration? For some people it's in nature, for some people in the dreams, psychedelics, reading books, great masters, great art. music, like so many ways for us each to tap into our channel, you know, that place where we're really open. Um, oh, like it touches my heart, to that whisper, to that spirit, you know, spirit coming through our experience. And so uh I was dreaming of portals, and I had this sense that we were going to have to walk through, that we were being prepared to pass through a portal. Um, and the feeling was, uh, in the dreams, the portals were often in the sky, and I was on the ground trying to figure out with other people how to get through the portal. And I feel like it's a really, like, it kind of felt literal, so I'm still kind of waiting for these portals. Um, but it could also be a metaphor, and I feel like that's what we're doing right now, is sort of standing like we are right now on the ground, trying to figure out how to get through the portal, right? And and I'm, you know, I have a very mystical orientation. I see life as a puzzle. A lot of my communication with the world is pretty constant, you know, and I'm again, like I think I'm speaking, I happen to be speaking, but I know the people in this space are many resonating. You know, you could call it maybe an animist view, you could call it, you know, many things, but for me, I'm like constantly puzzling out what the world is trying to share with me, and I'm very interested in that exchange, that inner outer, that relationship between my inner experience and what's happening in the outside world. So um, yeah, and just today, as I was rewatching that video, I said to Ari, I said, I think we walked through the portal when we made that video. Um, and it was like this trippy experience where I just noticed the thing we do where we constantly put things like in the future. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, that was it. We did the ritual. We actually walked through the portal. Um, and there's nothing to wait for, you know, like it's not some, I mean, there could also be a portal that's going to open up in the sky. Like, I don't want to discourage us from thinking about that also, because that would be amazing. Um, but I thought it, and as soon as I thought it, it felt true to me. And it felt like it just put me in touch with that way that we're constantly creating our reality, you know, and like all the more reason to see life as art and to be making art of our lives, because we're making ourselves. It's like we're making the art, but the art is making us, right? So I think we walked through the portal is the short, the long way around to the short answer, and things have been really weird on the other side. So I'll stop there.
Oh, that was great, Skyler. I mean, so much, so many different images and sort of threads were coming up as you were saying that. I mean, one thing that felt really important was this idea of that we look into the future, that sort of where we're trying to get to is through something in a way, you know. And so there's something of portals. When I was kind of picturing portals as you were speaking, I thought there's something of a glimpse into the mystery, and you only get a little glimpse. The portal always implies something much bigger on the other side, right? Like a wormhole. But there's kind of a glimpse of it. And the other thing that came up for me was that this idea of chaos, right? And so there's something of chaos to a portal for sure, but I'm wondering whether if we've stepped through it, it's sort of incumbent on us to learn how to move with chaos in a new way. Because I even think of actually even stepping through it, you know, in science fiction, you step through a wormhole, it's usually really chaotic. It's maybe that's for a dramatic effect, but these images come from the unconscious, you know, so there's a reason that we understand to some level stepping through a portal and then going through. And, if you want to get super nerdy about it, and anyone who watched Deep Space Nine, sometimes there's entities in the portal who can give us visions. But I will leave that aside for now. But there is something, I think, of being, let's assume that it's not about we are moving towards some kind of goal in the future. John, I interviewed John Vervaeke recently for Crossroads, for the upcoming documentary, and he said something about the sacred, which just really stuck with me, which was, that we have to get over seeing the sacred as this perfect thing or this perfect point in the future, or even this perfect point. Instead, it's a beginning. It's the beginning of things. It's a birth in a way. And I thought that was very profound. And I feel some of that in what you're saying. And so to kind of keep going with that metaphor, does that scan for you? Do you think there's something of the times we're living in that require us to have a different relationship with chaos?
I think it depends on who you are. It's so individual. I think it's part of what I'm noticing, is that everything feels very simultaneous and also individual. And so for me, it's really important to orient, like I'm noticing that a lot of my work right now is holding a lot of moving parts, right? And not in the multitasking way I was doing in like the 90s and 2000s, not like with to-do lists, organizing and, multitasking and like literally simultaneously. And also a lot of abrupt, sorry, I'm also noticing an echo. I don't know if there's any.
So I'm trying to fix the echo someone noticed, and I've made the echo now move to your side. So let me see if I can fix that again.
That's okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm orienting a lot, towards chaos. So for example, like let's be specific. My partner lives in Los Angeles and he's had to evacuate his home. And so just a couple weeks ago, he and his daughter arrived at my house in New York. And we've been integrating, like suddenly, unexpectedly. And it's, yeah. And then, I just feel like a lot of people in my life right now are experiencing very sudden, very abrupt life changes and having to find new ways to cope and thrive. I don't know, maybe thrive is going a bit far. I don't know that we're thriving yet, but survive. Enjoy things here and there, like just take things as they come, relax, let go. Like there are a lot of new skills that we're being forced to learn on the fly, kind of like being thrown in the deep end of the pool a little bit. And it also brings up a lot of compassion for me, because I love what John's saying about the sacred not being this perfect thing. Like it's very messy. It's very, very messy, like having a lot of self-compassion, being short-tempered, like, ugly parts of myself showing up, to conversations and or seeing like the best and the worst. I don't even want to call it the worst, but like really having to be with the messiness of life in a kind of unavoidable way, which is really a gift in a way, because I think that given the choice, a lot of, I mean, myself included, human beings will take like, maybe the rain check on the harder life lessons. So there's no rain checks, there's no layaway. It's just like, boom, I keep getting these like phone calls or texts and, yeah, and like my friend David said to me recently, he said, like, when are we gonna start living? Like, when are we gonna stop living as if we're gonna go back to normal? Like, that'll be nice when everybody finally just stops thinking that there's some normal or baseline that we're gonna go back to. And I mean, we had a laugh, but it felt funny and it felt poignant and it felt true to me and also a bit scary. because obviously we're holding that belief because there's some comfort in that. So yeah, I think the last thing, as I say comfort, what comes up for me is this, as you know, Ali, like a lot of my work over the last few years has been about embodiment and grounding, really, which has been a big practice in my life and like out of necessity. And I think it's more important than ever is, in the midst of the chaos, as things feel very like I keep getting on Zooms or talking to people and they indicate with their gestures and in their words a swirling energy, which I just find kind of interesting, like graphically or like texturally. Like, are the energies swirling? It's been very windy in a lot of places, like Los Angeles, the winds were a factor. In New York, it's been so windy here this winter. So this swirling energy, just, that center point, that stillness at the center, the grounding, like a tree, in the midst of a storm. Like these images and metaphors are very present for me too.
Cannot tell you how much I have been swirling for the last month. So that really lands with me. Or let's say doesn't land, it swirls inside me.
Swirls, right.
It swirls. Something that you mentioned, your friend David saying about, when are we going to stop living as if it's all going to go back to normal? That's a very potent idea. And I'm curious, maybe both in Substack and in here in the Zoom, I'd be curious if people could put in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10, how uncomfortable does that make you feel? So 1 being, I'm completely chill about that, don't need to go back to normal. 10 being, oh dear God. Yeah, it'd be interesting just to get a temperature check. Yeah, got some 4.
Mhm.
Some 3s in the Substack, 3.5. So quite low ones. That's not, I mean, that's it's interesting. I think I'm probably at a 5, I think, even though I don't think the normal we would want to go back to is a normal I want to go back to. But there is something of groundedness and certainty that appeals to me. But there is also, yeah, just trying to find the right way to phrase it. There is some kind of dynamic tension, I think, between stepping completely into new territory and just being like everything we've come from and thought we knew is no more, and being able to anchor ourselves in something. And it's right, actually, as I'm saying it, what I'm feeling is my body. I think my body feels like the best place to anchor myself in that, because that will always be there. It's my route into the present moment, and then at the same time, there's like a deep excitement that I feel about not being able to go back. It's it's like a quest. There's a type of narrative in Christopher Booker's book, The 7 Basic Plots, which is a voyage and return, where we voyage out, like Gulliver's, Gulliver comes back. He's been like, you will not believe where I've been, and it's changed me, and I now see the world in a different way. And there's also a quest, which is primarily about moving forward, and then there's a rebirth, which I think is what we're in. I think we're in a rebirth, because in a rebirth, you are reborn. You are someone new at the end of that story, and I think that's I wrote it in the intro piece of Kainos. I think that's kind of where we are, and we can't possibly know what comes from that. So I don't have a question, Skyler. After that, I'm just gonna stop talking.
I
see what
think
comes
I
up.
was just noticing that how funny even that exercise, like I got excited about the numbers in the exercise, but as the numbers were coming in, I just heard this voice, or I don't know, it was some kind of a wry laughter or something that was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter how we feel about it. It felt like such a human thing to do. The mystery was like, I'm going to be chaos, whether you're at a 3 or a 7, sorry, or not sorry, not sorry. Which maybe is another point we could bring in. A sense of humor is helpful, I think, in the midst of it all.
there. There's a Zen saying, which I'm going to get wrong, but it's something like, the wild geese have no intention of casting their reflection on the lake, and the lake has no memory to retain it. It's
Mm.
just kind of this beingness of reality and this kind of conceit, exactly as you're pointing to. I completely agree with you. It made me laugh. Yeah, it's
But I will also
yeah.
say that it came up, it's coming up around swirling and around like tracking, like how we're doing with what's going on. I mean, good for us. Okay, so this is the simultaneity that I'm talking about. It's like holding the both and constantly. Like, yeah, it's both futile and funny and very human to do this. It's also like kind of cool and sweet that we check in with each other to see how we're doing. Um, but oh yeah, yeah, and I've lost my thought. So there we are in the emptiness.
He got caught by the swirl. That's the nature of the swirl. And kind of catch his thoughts. Let's maybe drop in a little bit into embodiment, because that's something that's quite an important aspect of your work. And I'm going to ask you a really sneaky question that I have asked other people. It's sneaky because it's deceptively simple. But what is embodiment? What does it mean to you?
Hmm. To me, it means presence with whatever's happening, like really being fully online, fully here, fully in my senses, um, fully with the discomfort, because that's often, I think, an impediment to me being embodied. I think that's the best answer I have. I don't want to go too theoretical. I like when Bonnie says, we can't. There's like no not embodied. Like we are in these bodies. We're incarnate. Um, I agree. And I'm very aware of dissociation, and I'm aware of times when I'm not really in touch with what's happening. Um, it's been a little bit of like a masochistic thread throughout my life, I would say. Um, but also sort of a playful masochism. Um, I do feel like being incarnate, like being in a woman's body in this life, in this incarnation, it's felt like a part of the journey has been fully feeling a lot of life, um, and my body, learning to trust my body, using the body as a navigational device through everything, conversations, hard conversations, adventures, life changes, like everything. So yeah, maybe making the body a friend. This is coming kind of fun.
Yeah, there's something really, I think, profound that you just touched on, which is um, the difference between the feeling of embodiment in a woman's body and a man's body, which is, of course, something that we can never really know, from either perspective. But I think I personally have a sense that there's a very, different level of sensitivity and embodiment that women can access. And it's not that men can't. I've run men's groups where embodiment's a very big part of it, and of course, like we can go very deep into what's going on in our bodies. But there is something, and this maybe sounds a bit cliched or sort of, I don't know, simple, but there's something of the female body being more aligned with changes that are happening in the world, more aware of and sensitive to those changes. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think there's truth to that, or is it?
I just don't even like, I feel like, it's like such an individual choice. Like I do feel like I've found my way into the body I needed to have the set of experiences that I needed in this life. And I feel like that's the case. I mean, I don't want to impose my views, but I do feel like that's my view, is that that's part of what we do when we're incarnating. Um, so I also, I would say yes. So not to avoid the question, I would
Mm,
agree. And, like in the Tibetan tradition, it said that, yes, the female body has 72,000 nadis. It has more nerve channels, more subtle channels than the male body. Um, and then I think, it's a matter of genetics, trauma, upbringing. I happen to be extremely sensitive, and part of that is a gift, and I think it's genetic. Like I come from a long line of sensory gifted sensors, but also like a lot of childhood trauma, like there's a vigilance in my system that I've had to like really work with. I thought, yeah, wow, that's
mm,
just been a whole journey. So I think it's true. I think the set of experiences is just unique. It's different. Like childbirth is a very unique experience. It's an initiation portal. Menopause is a very unique experience. It's an initiation portal. Maybe if anything, that a lot of the initiations that we go through as a woman come through the body.
mm,
Menses, like starting the period, the fertility years. Like there is a way that they're kind of unavoidable. um, and yeah, and so surrender, letting go, surrender. This is a big part of the journey, I think, in a feminine body.
mm, mm. Yeah, it just strikes me that so many, I think on the masculine side, there's a lot of initiation is defined by pitting yourself against the world, and being and developing a particular kind of, but there's a very deep alignment that can come from that, of really aligning yourself with reality through challenge, and so it's, go and hunt this or go and spend 3 days there and, see if you can survive in nature. But there's a kind of deep connection that comes through, I think, all these different approaches, and for men and women both, right? We can all go through different types of initiation like that. I'm also conscious that, I embodiment is very important to me, and I do a lot of embodied practices. And it's something, my wife pointed out recently, through conversations, these conversations on Kainos and elsewhere, of like, it's important as well not to, and I notice I've done this a little bit myself, see embodiment as sort of the solution to the meta crisis. Like if we come back to our bodies and we come back into a presence and back into a groundedness and alignment with reality, that's going to be that's kind of a solution. I think it's perhaps the beginning of, I think it's essential. I think it's an essential step. But I think there's something very deep. I find myself falling into that trap in a sense of like, yes, okay, great, back in reality, and then somehow things will work out. But I think there's something of, yeah, I think maybe that's why subconsciously the masculine initiation came up, is I think there's something of being present in the world in various ways and changing our relationship to the world, which requires being in the body first, whether that's our relationship to the land, to one another, to the city we live in, to the community we're in. There's something of first step embodiment, second step agency, right? Somehow being in a new kind of agency. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I have a hard time with first and second steps, I mean, I don't know. It's like, um, yeah, I mean, what I know is that for me, I guess this would be, feel like there's this loose theme in our conversation around, I'm still with the original question, which was like, what's changed? Where do we go from here? Or like, what feels new? And I've also been sitting a lot with our relationship to the elements, like our relationship to being here on Earth, and um, made of these elements, and um, a daily practice, a regular practice for me is making offerings in nature. And this has been going on since 2017, very, very regularly, almost daily. And I didn't know for years why I was doing it, to be honest. Like that's how I knew I was onto something, is that I was felt compelled to do this thing and I didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't have any rational or reasonable explanation for it, but I had to do it. Like on the worst weather in New York City, I would go out into the parks or into my neighborhood and pick up things that felt beautiful to me or calling to me and arrange them into these mandalas. And then eventually I started to realize that I thought they were for me at first. Um, I thought I was working something out, maybe my healing. And of course, this is how Jung would encourage his patients to make mandalas for integration and to work things out. And so I thought that's what I was doing. And then it occurred to me a couple years in to that I was really, uh, that it was for Earth, that it was for the places where I was making the mandalas, that there was something I was doing that was an offering. It was, yeah, of course it's for me, but it was really in that giving, in that offering process that they began to like really speak to me. This practice did. And now many years in, like it continues to deepen this conversation. Like, for example, about 6 months ago, I was going through a really hard time. And a dear friend of mine, a woman, Rochelle, who also makes nature offerings, she said, well, have you opened to receive back? Like, you've given so much. You have spent so much time making offerings to nature. Maybe she can help you. Like, maybe you can receive back from her. And it was challenging for me. I think it's really challenging for a lot of us to open to receive, to feel worthy of receiving from nature. Like, I mean, now it sounds a little bit silly because of course that's what she wants to be doing, like she's like wants to be nurturing her children. But I realized I had this kind of unconscious block. Like I wasn't even really allowing it for some strange belief I had about not really being fully worthy of her love, support, help. And so I worked for a while to open myself to actually be in the reciprocity of that gesture. Like, yeah, like it's not greedy. It's not, it's like a law of the universe. It's actually real. You will receive if you open, if you're giving from the heart. So learning to receive back, learning to open to a deeper relationship with the elements, has been a big part of this piece of the journey for me. And the last word on that is that I made a lot of mandalas in California, in the Palisades, and right in the area where the fires happened. I went hiking in those hills with Chad, who's here. Did a lot of hiking in the hills, did a lot of mandalas. And when the fires happened and destroyed that whole area, every single mandala that I had made on that land came back to me. Like, I didn't even know I was geolocating. I didn't realize that I was like putting a pin down, like actually creating a relationship with the place, in this way where I had a grid of love, really, like love, honoring, respect. I can tell you almost like down to the seed pods, like what each mandala was made. And I wouldn't have known that I wasn't looking back. I wasn't retrospective in that way until the fires came through and they were just gone. So yeah, so embodiment. I mean, it's just also like, I think for me, what embodiment is opening into is this deeper and more profound relationship with the elements and embeddedness in the world that we live in, which is elemental.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. There's you mentioned Jung, and then also you mentioned offerings, and there's this. It reminded me of there's a really amazing and challenging book called Catafalque by Peter Kingsley, which I highly recommend, which is a biography of Jung, but it's not really a biography. It kind of is, but it's something different. It's quite a mystical tome, really. But he talks about how the original connotation of like therapia, which I'm probably mispronouncing because my Greek is not very good, but therapia, where we get the word therapy from, has the connotation of tending to, and there are some very old uses of it, which are therapia theon, which is tending to the gods. And that was a really common idea and very common practice, and of course is in many parts of the world. Like I love Thailand, for example, and you will see shrines in many places, and that's common in many places around the world. But something I think we really lost during the Enlightenment in the West, not entirely because people, people in Ireland were giving offerings until probably like last week, probably right now, right? But on a more spread out scale, it was more common, and there is something of, I think part of what we lose in that is not only a relationship to the divine or to nature where we are giving rather than just asking for or taking, as the case might be, but I think we also lose the meaning of what a relationship is, because a relationship is not one way. And I was talking to Josh Schreier about this recently, who does the Emerald podcast, and he had obviously some great things to say about this. And we were talking about how, we have like the environmental movements that we have in the West, sometimes can fall into this view of nature almost as this like idealized form. This kind of idealized mother or an idealized form. And then, you could also have the opposite side of it. You could have a kind of very extractive view where nature is purely trying to kill you. But the truth is, it's both. It's both wonderful and beautiful and trying to kill you, depending on the day, And so it's it's an incredibly complex relationship. But I think we lose all of that complexity, of course, when we stop seeing ourselves as nature. That immediately goes away. But that's something I've been thinking about a lot, with this question of where do we go from here? And I'm thinking about what happens to the climate movements that have been, which are, for various geopolitical reasons, are in a difficult position. And I think for cultural reasons have been really hollowed out by, so forms of social justice activism, which, many in the movement feel have really taken attention away from kind of bigger policy issues. And so there's a lot of working out to do. And I do think there's space as well for a reevaluation of how complex can we see our relationship with nature? Can we let it be both a relationship that heals and one that kills? And I think that for me feels really important right now.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about honoring the gods and how we've lost that practice. I mean, for me at this point, I can't really engage with anything where the sacred isn't at the center. It doesn't make sense to me and doesn't feel, it feels hubristic and kind of ridiculous, because I feel very in touch with the powers that are actively trying to help us through this time. And yeah, I mean, that you could think of that in a very simple way, like, well, yeah, it just feels important to say, like, another obsession I've had in this life that didn't really fully make sense to me. Maybe I'm just getting old. Like, is this how it is? People who consider themselves a bit more mature, like, everything starts to make sense. I think that's probably one of the better parts of getting older. It's like, oh, that's why I was doing that. Yeah, I've been in this life like very interested in gods and archetypal forms and energies, and have studied most of the great traditions to different levels of depth. I remember like at some point thinking, because I would get the advice like, oh, you need to pick a path, like, pick a lane and stay in it, or you'll never get to the top of the mountain or whatever, which scared me a little bit, but I couldn't stop. I was like, I needed to actually know the pantheon, like the variety, the diversity of spirits who seem to be in operation here on Earth. And And as I've gotten older and as I've become more and more a channel, like as my channel gets more and more open, I'm very, very happy to have a working knowledge of a lot of these energies because, like I kind of alluded to earlier, like I want to kind of know who I'm working with. And um, so, uh, yeah, so I am also, I love this idea of being in dialogue. It's so true in my experience. It's like, some of them are very funny, some of them are tricksters, some of them are playful, some of them are just nothing but love and compassion. Some of them, I run into some devious characters. And if you're talking to Josh Ray, then you're not going to be surprised by that. His guardianship podcast on the Emerald, I think that episode is like required reading, required listening for these times. It's one of the greatest pieces of content I've come across in a long time. So important, like who are we channeling? Who are we listening to? And the more that you're in relationship, I find the more I'm in relationship with these energies, making offerings, reading about them, speaking to them, inviting that relationship, and yeah, in the spirit of, in the right spirit, then the better off I am when they show up. And it's fun. Like, I mean, just to give an example, like I was hiking with my partner in California November, and we went to this holy mountain outside of LA, and it's a place that we frequently go to, and this mountain is really, really potent energetically. And so we were making a pilgrimage, and we were in that spirit, and halfway up the mountain, I got this image of Mount Kailash in India. Now, I've never been to Mount Kailash, but I knew it was Mount Kailash. And it was insistent. And so then I realized, oh, okay, I'll spare the details. Long story short, we got to our destination. We said prayers, which is another topic of conversation I'm happy to get into. I'm very big on prayer these days. And then we made a mandala, and the mandala was so strange. Like it was big and bold and big sticks and big rocks. And when we finished it, I looked at it and it felt alive. And very pretty quickly, I recognized Ganesha. And as soon as I recognized it, you could just like you see it in the and Ari doesn't know who he was. He doesn't like recognize Ganesha that way. So I was showing him pictures. But I was so happy, like so celebratory, like what a fun and wonderful deity to show up. And it made so much sense for us at that time in our life. It felt like such a great gift. And I just felt so happy that I could recognize this being coming through. And that, yeah. So I guess, yeah, just my agreement that propitiating the gods, having a relationship with the gods is like pretty useful, actually. Important.
Yeah, and it might seem abstract in some way. If for some of us it's second nature, for others it might feel abstract. But in my book, I talk about how the experience of sort of encountering entities on DMT, which if people aren't familiar with the psychedelic DMT, it's a powerful psychedelic that people often encounter entities on. And when I was pumped full of it for 40 minutes at a time, you encounter many entities, and there's a way in which I think it's not so different to what we're encountering with AI now. We're encountering discarnate entities online that seemingly have agency, but we're not entirely sure if they do. They have different archetypal personalities. Some are incredibly weird, inexplicable. And I remember going, before going into those experiences and talking to a friend and saying, and then being like, well, I'm always in awe of all the entities, and I'm like sort of like cowed down. And I was like, oh, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, and he's like, well, no, but aren't you afraid? And I was like, no, because like I wouldn't do that to a human or any other entity. I'm just going to show up as me and just kind of have an interaction. I think there's something like there's something similar, kind of when we're interacting online as well. Like we're increasingly going to have relationships with very convincing slash maybe even conscious artificial entities. And that's going to be an entirely new skill set that we're all going to either, well, perhaps we won't have to learn it, but there's a good chance that we will. And already the online world is like that. It's a realm where we don't know if we're being catfish. We don't know what's true. We don't know, like it's very much an other world full of entities. Some of the entities are us, but some of them are our alter egos because we don't want to be us online, So it's a very complex swirl. So, Skyler, I want to open up to questions here in the Zoom, and we'll close the Substack in a moment because unfortunately we haven't found a way to let you guys hear the questions that are happening on the Zoom. But is there anything you want to just name or close with that you haven't yet before we do that, Skyler?
Goodness. Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say, because we were gonna, we didn't end up talking about art that much, but I guess just to say, I'm very excited about all of us. Like you mentioned that you thought maybe we were in a rebirth process, and I was recently online with Sylvie from the Second Renaissance movement, and I agree. I think it's like a really, really exciting time, like the potential for all of us to be creators, to be finding ourselves through the art that feels the best to us. And using the art as an like for development, for evolution, like for the development of consciousness, and not just for distraction or for profit or for whatever, else it's been in service to in the last decades. And so, yeah, write the book, write the poem, like cook the meal, dance the dance, like whatever is in our hearts, like just doing it, even if it's awkward, even if it's small. My partner was a really great inspiration for me. I have a touch of or actually, I'm like, on the other side of menopause, I'm kind of healed of this perfectionist impulse. Another gift of aging. I don't really feel like I need to be such a perfectionist, but when I was younger, I know that got in the way of creating the art that I wanted to make, and now I just am in the sheer joy of it, and a part of that was just like bite-sized chunks, like doing something that you can finish every day, and sticking with something. These are like the artist's way all over again. Like there needs to be a new artist's way, if anyone knows that book and process. Just an encouragement to, as it said in the video, stop worrying, start walking. Like that's the instruction I keep giving myself. That's my mantra right now. It's like whatever comes up in the mind, stop worrying, start walking. Just do the thing.
Lovely, lovely, lovely piece of wisdom to end this section on. So we're going to open up for questions here in Zoom, and everyone at Substack, thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see you on one of these in the future. If you want to join these live, you can become a Kainos member as well, and hope you have a lovely day or evening or night or morning wherever you are. There we go. Cool. Okay, after hours, it's just us now. Let's open up for some thoughts, questions, inspirations. Let's see. Yeah, May?
Hi, it's not really a question, but I resonate with so much of what's been said. I've been a professional musician all my life, largely in the commercial world. I started off in a Celtic rock band, being Scottish with a 3/4 Irish background, and but I ended up, being a session singer in London. But at the same time, I've always had a very esoteric bent, and I've been involved with lots of things since my early 20s, but I've always kept them completely separate because I could never feel I could talk about the spiritual side with my colleagues. But during COVID, I lost my voice for quite a while. And I picked up my fiddle. I used to play a bit of Irish fiddle, and I hadn't played it for about 40 years. And I started to see references to the She, the Us She in Ireland, who are basically cousin beings to humanity who live in the Hollow Hills. And I saw references to them everywhere. And while I'd known about them, I hadn't been that interested before. But I started to compose music, starting with violins instead of guitars and music. Very strange music. And like Alexander was saying, I felt it was very important to approach these beings as an equal, because otherwise they can just play with you, I think, and it's been really fascinating. I've now got about 5 or 6 tracks, that are very different from anything I've done before. And eventually I've been able to add voice as well once I got my voice back. But I totally have felt exactly the same as Schuyler, that now something has really flipped in that the sacred has to be at the heart of everything. And any musical things or anything going forward, no matter what it is, that has to be the case. But it's a case of co-creating with nature, giving and receiving. And that's all I wanted to say, really, just how much I've resonated with everything that's been said.
Well, I want to hear if you have any thoughts, Skyler, but May, thank you so much. I mean, I think I speak for everyone when I say, is there somewhere where we can listen to your music yet? Does that exist yet, or is it out?
Not that. I mean, I've got quite a lot of stuff on Spotify, but that's not the new stuff. I've got something on YouTube called The Snows That Melt the Soonest, which is maybe kind of somewhere near the direction. Nice. But I will be I'm building a website on animism and music at the moment, and I'm hoping to put it together there.
Beautiful. Please do. Like Skyler said, write that book, make that music. It's really funny you mention it because I played Irish trad, I played the flute, and I've started singing more. And I'm learning, I don't know, I'm probably learning like a song every few weeks. And I've noticed that I would say a good 60-70% of Irish songs have a woman dying at the end. I was like, what is the deal with this? I was like, man, this is a beautiful song, but this woman's gonna, yeah, third verse, like, oh man. And I've thought about it a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I think there's something of an expression of occupation, of the land being occupied for 700 years, that there's in a way, the land is the mother, and it's gone. It's not ours anymore, in a sense. So I think I wonder if there's an element of that. I don't know, Angie, you might have thoughts on that. What do you reckon? I'm sure there's lots of reasons for it, but
yeah, we were occupied for about 800 years.
True.
And yeah, we do have that colony thing of being rebels. But yes, there are always, and even Bob Dylan, because he's back in the zeitgeist now, when he was in the pubs in Greenwich, and you had the Clancy brothers, and they were all singing, and he was talking about it on No Direction Home, about it's like the beautiful weeping songs, and then the killing, and there's the two polarities that are there. And I suppose as being a colonized people, we had to behave ourselves and submit to torture as such, or being good, not walking on the grass. And then the other side that will come down as the Gurriers and the hooligans, and kill the soldiers on the horrible things, but trying to survive as a nation. I mean, we lost our own language, our Irish language. Now there are a few towns in the west of Ireland, but imagine losing your mother language. We love the Brits now, but the music is essential for the getting in touch of the whole weeping and gnashing of teeth. But there's one thing I wanted to say, Skyler, that on Sunday when I read the manifesto about the renaissance of art. And Neptune, the planet Neptune, which is art and so much more, but predominantly art and music. It's going into Aries this year, and that's a 165-year cycle. And the last time Neptune went into Aries was the end of the Romantic art and the beginning of Impressionism. So it really is a time for a new renaissance. And I was interested in seeing that in your manifesto. So it is there in that, framework as well. So yeah, I'm glad to be going to your art classes. Thank you. Thank you, Ellie.
Skyler, do you wanna unmute? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the planetary alignments. Thank you. I feel like I'm always so grateful when there are astrologers in the space to explain why things have been the way they have been. It always aligns for me. Yeah, and Angie's just mentioned this art of transmutation, which is a Sunday space that Ari and I are going to be holding probably every 2 weeks, like Sundays, 12 to 2 Eastern Time US, to feature alchemical art and then also to do practice or play together. And so it's an experiment, and yeah, it's just about having fun and tapping into the creativity collectively.
That sounds awesome. But do you have a link for that, Skyler? You can put in anywhere?
Not yet.
Well, people can subscribe to
Yeah,
your
my Substack is what
Substack.
they
Yeah. Awesome. We have time. Okay, let's do one more. We're over time, but let's ignore boundaries. Let's let the swirl keep swirling. And Andre, go ahead. You got your hand up, man.
Just have one passage of my friend Rilke.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Seems very apropos when all the last shares have been there. You know well you are in a period of transition and want nothing more than to be transformed. If there is something ailing in the way you go about things, then remember that sickness is the means by which an organism reads itself or something foreign to it. All one has to do is help it to be ill, to have its whole illness and let it break out, for that is now it mends itself. So I feel the grief, and when you hear the word sacred, how it has a connection with the word heart from its origin. That means that we have to give away something we truly value. So there is some optimism and some hope, but we always feel like it's somebody else who's going to be the casualty. But deep inside, we feel this grief of like, oh, something dear to us has to be given in exchange for that transformation. And that might be a different answer for each and single one of us, but just let me sync with that. With age, it's the flip side of love.
Oh man, thank you for bringing that in. Yeah, that hits for me, the sense of having to let go of something to grow. Yeah, I really feel that. Everyone, thank you so much for your presence, for your lovely contributions. Again, I think I said it in our session with Trish on Monday, like there's just a really lovely field I feel really grateful for, and just look forward to these. And we are, and obviously I'm going to have more conversations with all of our guests, including Skyler, at some point as the project evolves. And Skyler, thank you so much for just your realness. I really appreciate your authenticity. It really shines through, and it just creates something really special in the field. So thank you. And next, so we have this shift happening for the next sessions where it's shifting to the other kind of membership, but we've also got to do on the website, an option that if you like the look of a month, you can just do a month. and choose to do that. So it's a little bit more manageable as well. The groups will become slightly more intimate, and also that we will be streaming them, and you'll see everything eventually as things move on. And yeah, thank you again, everyone. Let's do our next week is Mina Salami, which is going to be really interesting. She has a new book out about Afro feminism. And then after that, we have Michael Phillips. So it's quite, there's a part of me that's like, had this anxiety about like the range of people we have coming on. Kainos, we have so many different people. And then we have Liv Barry and Jordan Hall. And then once you see Crossroads, like we've got some like, guest in there that's like, oh, they're really probably would never be on a call like this ever, economists and whatnot. And so I'm just kind of just trying to hold that, and that is kind of how I like to do my art. So I'm just at my edge with that, but I absolutely love it, and I love the variety, and everyone is bringing something really unique. So thank you, everyone, and let's unmute and do our thank you to Skyler and our goodbye to each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Art with a made space. Yay.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thanks, guys.